reverting back to one of the things we talked about before and how we do have a blueprint. And, a lot of our players kind of know what to expect now, especially the guys that have been through it a couple of years and what camp's going to look like in that schedule. And it's a common coaching phrase, but complacency is the enemy. It really is. And all the great steps that we've taken in the last 2 years and being undefeated at home, I mean, the schedule turns now, and we've got a packed home slate with nationally ranked opponents and playoff teams, and nothing is given to us, right? And we certainly graduated a good number of talent. We have a lot coming back as well, but it is a big part of this season is like this is our own team. It's kind of its own, in a time capsule, so to speak.
On today's episode of the Left Hash Call, we welcome a man who I've had the pleasure of working for. This individual was tasked with taking over a team that was 1-9 for back-to-back seasons, and since him taking over in his first 2 seasons as head football coach, his teams have only gotten better, including this past season, going undefeated at home for the first time in a very, very long time. I am so excited for this show. Welcome to the show, my friend, the head football coach at Simpson College, Coach Reed Hoskins. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Seth. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for coming on. And this is long overdue. I will say that. But nonetheless, very excited to have you on and talk a little Simpson.
Did you want to get into the terms of our contract and our agreement on this too, or
what is that?
on the golf course?
Right. Yeah. Did you?
That was a fireball shot was your signing bonus,
right?
There you
go. We'll put that in there for sure. But nonetheless, man, I'm so excited to have you on. How's the summer been so far? Obviously, you're going into your 3rd year here. What's changed over the last, from the first year now all the way to your 3rd year?
Yeah, a common phrase they use, as I found out when you're a new head football coach, and there's a lot of things to do. It's like drinking from a fire hose, right? And I wouldn't say that that valve's been completely shut off, but it's definitely slowed a bit. It's great when you get to the 2nd, especially 3rd year. There's a blueprint, right? And even all of the scheduling we put together, and the changes we make from year 1 to year 2. Have a lot of notes and feedback on what that is, why we did it, this worked, this didn't, and really creates a little more like comfort going into the season. But at the same time, you're always looking for ways to take the next steps as a program. That's for sure.
Obviously, the team that you took over obviously hadn't had a ton of success in the past. Taking that first year over, I bet the recruiting process then is a lot different than how you're able to get ahead now.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that first year and what kind of challenges that you faced right away.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, taking over a program where the roster was a lot smaller from that side of things, and it needed to recruit players, hire a staff, from scratch. Really recruiting alumni to get connected with. And, there's a lot of things on your plate, from that side of things. So there's a ton of running around. Our organization, I think, immediately wasn't as good as it is now, certainly in the recruiting process, and a lot of the things that we've put in as far as just some of those checks and balances, our evaluation system, just our process as a staff of, identifying the right young men to be a part of our team, has really evolved. So it's fun to continue to see that get refined. But it's still kind of wild that it's already been, 2 seasons going into year 3 like that. That happens like snap of a finger. That's for sure.
Obviously, you talk about the staff. One of the unique things in any staff is that you've been able to retain, most of your full-time staff here. Talk about them and what they've kind of meant to this program so far and getting this thing to where it is right now.
Yeah, huge. I mean, so instrumental in the continuity, the messaging really sinking in, and just as far as who we are and the things that are important to us, and not only who we are, but who we want to be in the future. And having a group of guys that aren't all just cookie cutter guys. I mean, there's a lot of different personalities in our offices, And guys have different strengths and different backgrounds, but are on the same page as far as, what we're trying to build and building it the right way. So I would probably point to that as our staffing as being one of the most instrumental pieces of us, taking the steps that we have in the last couple of years.
I want to go now all the way back to high school, coming out of high school. And I learned pretty late that we both attended the same high school. I obviously graduated from a different high school,
Sure.
but Grinnell High School coming out, I think, a lot of some of the stuff that we'll talk about is probably going to be a little bit refresher for me because I've heard you talk about it a bunch, but talk about coming out of college or coming out of high school.
Yeah.
And originally you thought, hey, I'm going to probably go to Simpson College right away, but then obviously going to Warburg. Talk about that process.
Yeah, no, I was absolutely set on Simpson, and being young and new to the process, I didn't know what recruiting was all about when I was 17 years old. But no, I talk about it a lot. My first college visit ever was to Simpson, and certainly a lot of these spaces that look different. But I remember Coach Williams walking me around, showing me things, and really talking about that process, and it felt like home. And he was somebody I wanted to play for, and there was a lot of tradition there, that's for sure. And unfortunately, through the fall of my senior year, Coach Williams actually, after the season, resigned, that way and left Simpson. And that's where kind of the recruiting process kind of started for me, because up until that point, I saw Simpson as the place I wanted to be. I really did. And who knows if that would have changed or not. But before they hired Coach Neiman here, I went on a couple different visits and, ended up at Warburg there and found a great group of coaches and people and certainly don't have any regrets with that. But I do often wonder to kind of think, what if, Coach Williams would have hung in there for another year or two and, what that would have looked like for my 4-year experience for sure.
Yeah. Did you always know you want to be a football coach from an early age, or kind of how did that process all go?
No, great question. No, I was lucky in a lot of ways. I knew when I was in 7th grade, that's what I wanted to do. And a little backstory with that side of it is my grandfather, my father's father, was a long time small high school and small college football coach, and coached at the private school level and the junior college level. Was a longtime head coach actually at South Tama, SDC, where I lived for a few years when I was younger. And he passed away well before I was around, when my dad was only 10. But that was kind of my connection, to my grandfather in that way. And he wrote a couple books and things that football looked completely different back then in the 40s and 50s, obviously, than it does today. But that was really what sparked my passion for more than just going out and playing. It's like, well, let's think about all the things that go into it and the organization piece of it. And, even when I was, middle school, high school age, like I was, as part of being a quarterback, I guess, was kind of, organizing the troops, and something that always fit for me and something I enjoyed, that's for sure.
Talk about that first job getting into coaching, because obviously everybody's story is a little bit unique, but one of the consistencies is you're definitely not making a lot of money. You're definitely not going to be a position coach, or sure as hell not a coordinator right away.
You know what we were paying you. Right?
We won't get into the details of that contract by any means, but talk about that first job and maybe some of the hard parts about obviously taking on maybe a job that didn't pay anything right away.
Yeah. No, and it was. And I knew that I always wanted to coach, and I was lucky that the staff in college that I played for really allowed me to be behind the scenes on a lot of that stuff. Not only being involved in recruiting and that piece of it, but the game planning process. My OC, Eric Kaler, was a phenomenal football mind, really saw the game in a lot of different ways and allowed me to be a part of that and have a lot of, control, from that side of things within the game, checking runs and all that type of stuff. So, that really helped with my education. But to be honest, even as a player, as a college student, I mean, everybody's got a lot of maturing to do, during that time. And I was no different. There's no question about it. And, I probably didn't get serious enough about like getting ready to take those next steps until like well after I was done playing and kind of starting that process, and ended up going on my one and only interview, out to North Carolina Wesleyan College, which was a startup that 3 seasons. Their 3rd season was when I got there and coached the wide receivers. Made $8,000, that year, with student loans and all that to pay for. I was like, I'll worry about that later, right? And lived in a freshman dorm, so I had a place to live, and a place to go to work every day, and I loved it. Honestly, it was a different part of the country than Iowa that I was born and raised in, and certainly loved being back here. But it was a new experience, that's for sure, and really allowed me to to learn a lot of different things and interact with new people and recruit new areas. Eastern Virginia, Western North Carolina, places that I got to go explore that were really, really cool. That's for sure. So it was a fun experience to get into. But certainly those hardships early on, financially is a big part of it. That's for sure.
You talk about finding yourself as a coach. One of the stories I've actually told on the show before. I remember my first spring here with you.
Yeah.
I was definitely the yeller and the screamer and the one that, yelled their, screamed their head off all the time. And I remember you came to me one time and you said, "No, you don't have to yell all the time." It's like, you're gonna kill yourself doing this. And so I think that was one of the things that, as a football coach, you see so many people, feel like they have to yell and feel like they have to scream. But it's more so about being yourself and being true to yourself versus feeling like you have to fit into this mold. Do you kind of feel that you've grown a lot throughout your career? And
that's a great point. And early on in my career, and part of that was probably my experience doing the same thing. And I don't want to say like making the same mistakes necessarily, but going through that same transition where, hey, my coaches were guys that were ripping ass and were all over you all the time, right? And it was intense in that side of it. And that was kind of the product of the environment I was in college. So, coaching for the first time, I was just exhausted at the end of every day, just from yelling and screaming. I was coaching whiteouts, like, naturally you're going to raise your voice. You got to project because, the guy you're talking to is 30, 40 yards away sometimes. Right. So, there's that part of it, but kind of finding that balance, to it. That was an important thing that, I learned early on is like, you have to be yourself in this profession. Like, if you're trying to be something that you're not, regardless of what it is, whether it's a yeller and screamer or, somebody that knows it all the time, like, the kids are going to see through it. They just do. Right. So I think just being genuine, about who you are, and especially early on in my career, it was like I had kind of a persona when I was coaching. I was on the field, like when I was around our players, like that's, it's Coach Hoskins there. Right. And then once I started having kids, especially, I was a whole different guy away from it. Right. And that was a part in my time at lacrosse that I really felt that just didn't fit for me. And, finding ways to kind of blur those lines has been a big part of it ever since, especially the last, decade or so in my coaching profession. So, being yourself, good and bad, and always, continually try to refine, who you are on a daily basis, but at the same time, making sure that you're not trying to be something that doesn't fit you. And that's one of the things I think, right or wrong, I felt like I've been able to embrace, quite a bit is, our players know who I am. They know who my family is. They know who I am as a dad, as well as a coach. And, I think that's a big part of our draw here is like, our guys know exactly what they're getting themselves into, when they commit to Simpson, and that's by design, that's for sure.
You talk about coming back to lacrosse, talk about your first, getting your first job as a position coach. Obviously that's a big deal to lead your own room for the first. What did you lead your own room? And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting connection out there. I was coaching receivers, and leading your own room is an interesting way to put it. We met in a locker room, from outside with an old VHS, cart, rolling in there. So that part of it was certainly interesting. Heck, man, I had a receiver, Shelton Leverett. He was our little slot, and he was unbelievably talented, had all sorts of different things going on. But we really didn't have worked out where he could come and meet at different times during the day. So a lot of times, that's where I really learned the value of like tip sheets for receivers and like drawing all that stuff out. I could drop that in his locker, head out to practice. And then while he's getting dressed, he's looking over those diagrams. Kid was sharp, and he'd get out there and he already knew all the install, from that side. So I learned a lot about, being flexible, depending on, your player schedules and their learning, preferences as far as that goes. It's getting your own room for the first time. I think is the goal for a lot of young coaches is just getting a chance to do it, from that side. But then once you do, it's like, all right, man, there's a lot of prep. There's a lot of things that go in there when you have to make sure that you're passing along the information that's vital, on a daily basis. That's for sure.
You talk about adjusting. I mean, now you're the running backs coach,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
that's obviously been an adjustment with
Yeah.
Demarco Young,
Yeah.
obviously
Yeah.
the deaf player on it. Talk about that,
Yeah.
adjustment in working with him, because he's obviously a really talented player. And
Yeah.
talk about working with him and working with Deanne
Yeah.
to really make it a seamless process for him.
Yeah, I mean, that whole process was really interesting, even in the recruiting side of things, just to, hey, how is this going to work, and I didn't know, I didn't have those answers. I was pretty upfront about that and say, hey, we're going to be learning all this together. But yeah, I mean, when it really comes down to it, is Demarco is, I mean, he's just, a freshman in college like every other guy, on our team, and certainly has, some different accommodations to make things work, for his situation. But, I mean, he's goofy, he's funny, he's ornery. He's a guy that's, still learning a lot of different things. But it just learning about the accessibility piece, his interpreter for the last 5 years or so, Dawn has been a huge part of our staff since she's got here. Have leaned into her a lot about like, hey, what have you guys done before? Because that's the great thing. She has a great football background as well, and is very invested in it. So for D and I mean, a big part of it was just kind of figuring out our own language. Naturally, as a coach, I'm pretty animated. I talk with my hands a lot, right? So, he picks up on that stuff a lot. And in a lot of ways, I mean, it wasn't easy. It was a transition for sure. And it still is every day with any of our players. But, I think we found a way that works for us that way. And, I mean, even getting him on the field and going through that process this year. And some of that was due to injury, him getting out there a little bit
Right.
sooner than we expected. But, it was a really cool process to see that all come together. That's for sure.
I never learned any sign language in high school or college, but
Yeah.
I definitely learned my fair share of just
Yeah.
interacting with DeMarco, because you naturally, like, you want to be able to communicate with,
Yeah.
with someone. Like, if someone speaks Spanish, like, you probably, and they're a part of your life, you want to,
Yeah.
obviously communicate with that. So I
No question.
learned quite a bit from DeMarco for sure. Let's go back then again to getting your first job after North Carolina. What
Yeah.
did that all look like?
Yeah. So I was out there just for a year from that side of it. Like I said, was just coaching, and that was it. And I didn't want to get back into grad school and pursue my master's. And an opportunity opened up at St. Cloud State, which no longer has a football
Right.
program, but it was a Division II program. They were transitioning between the NCC and into the Northern Sun at my time there. So that was really interesting to have kind of a front row seat to see that part of it. So I was a GA there for essentially a year plus, from that side. And that was the last time I coached running backs, actually.
Okay.
It was at St. Cloud State before last season. And then it was about this time, not much earlier, during the summer after my first year, that I got a call from actually the head coach now at Wartburg, Chris Winter, who was the DB's coach at Wartburg, my alma mater. And my former coach had just left to, go to another position at Green Valley State, and a great opportunity for him. And they needed somebody that could coach quarterbacks and receivers. And, it wasn't hard for me to be like, well, yeah, that's a full-time job, right? I mean, you move back to, place that I went to school, and, my wife and I were just getting engaged at that point. So, I mean, there was a lot of benefits to that beyond the excitement of like, all right, hey, it's not only do I have my own room, but I got a couple rooms put together,
Right.
from that side of it, and all these things we need to do. And hey, it's 2.5 weeks before the season starts. So, no, it was, I didn't get a lot of time to think, about it. It was just like, let's just go, right? Let's just pour another cup of coffee and run towards it and see what we can get sorted out. And lucky enough, I mean, it was a really good staff and a lot of really good players during a couple of those years that helped, that's for sure.
First time being an offensive coordinator, what
Yeah.
was that transition like? Because obviously as a
Yeah.
quarterback, you have an idea of, I always used to say, like, Coach, I should probably be calling this, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
obviously you don't know what you don't know. Talk
Sure.
about that transition.
Yeah, no, I think most
coordinators their first couple of years, it's just like you're going to screw things up. It's just a matter how bad, and trying to limit that, just because you learn so much from doing it and going through that process. And I was really fortunate to be around some really creative guys that I worked for and worked with in the offensive room. I mean, Tim Morrison, who, was the guy recruiting me out of high school, really, him and Matt Mitchell, and he was the line coach, became the coordinator there, was phenomenal, just diagramming the run game. I mean, the game plan answers, all those types of things from that side of it, and got to work with him for 2 years. He's now at South Dakota, actually, as the OC. Matt Wheeler, who's I worked with in North Carolina, came back, was the OC, there as well for a year. And the guy just sees the game in a completely different way, so that was hard, kind of being that number 2 a little bit before I became a coordinator, having to adjust to different styles. But I really, looking back at it, benefited in a huge way from my experiences working with just guys that see the game differently, and allows you as a coordinator to mix and match things that make sense to you, but you can kind of draw from some of these different experiences that, oh, this is what I'm seeing. All right, here was our answer for that this year, or here's another way that we attacked it. And sometimes as a young coordinator, I think I had too many options, too many things, too many answers, where I know early on I was always trying to reinvent it. It was like from week to week, it's like we had our base offense, but then we'd kind of add all this other stuff in for if we were playing Stout, or if we were playing Whitewater that week, or if we were playing Oshkosh, we'll have radically different defensive fronts, right? Sure. So having those answers, is dangerous sometimes, because you can try to put too much in and overwhelm your guys with football knowledge, essentially, where they're only going to absorb so much, So as a young coordinator, I think that was probably one of the biggest mistakes that I made, was almost, not being as committed as I should have been to probably a smaller menu to allow our guys to really be good at, few things, as opposed to have a little bit of everything.
As a former quarterbacks, receivers coach, running backs coach, what kind of approach did you have to take when you were first really trying to figure out this whole run game thing? Because I know for me, that was, like foreign language to me. I didn't know anything about reach block. I didn't know anything about that. And so what kind of, resources or individuals did you have to call on when you were first calling an offense?
Yeah. I think, again, my experience, not only as a coach working with some different guys and some really good run game coordinators, but actually as a player. We had good teams, and I was surrounded by a lot of really good players during that era. And I was lucky to be the guy that was, behind center, essentially, is the way I kind of saw it. But one of my biggest strengths back then was everything was a check with me system. So I called most of the run game at the line of scrimmage. A lot of our base runs will be, whatever, either checking power this way or this way, and we're checking it to the 3 to get double teams we want, either back block for our center, or, if you're talking about pin and pull, who's the tightest, defensive end, and then looking at your interior. So it was like, I was just taught the game in college that way, where it did start up front with that side of it. And it was a lot early on. That was probably one of the things that allowed me to become the starter as a sophomore when I did. It's just because, I dove into that, immersed myself in it, and want to know everything I could about the defensive front that way. So, and how that tied into our run game and protection. So, as a coach, that definitely benefited me. I didn't use that as much when I'm coaching receivers, but when I got back into the quarterback side of things, that was something that was really natural. And, I definitely, made calls to guys like, Tim Morrison from that side of things as well, that I really leaned into. And Jack Ginn, who was a guy that was a mentor, was my first head coach I ever worked for. And, really looked into a lot of those different things. But, at the same time, I always trusted my offensive line coach to, like, all right, hey, here's what we're doing, right? It's like, you go out and coach the technique and make sure our guys are buttoned up on the things that are critical for them. So.
Definitely feels like that doesn't happen a ton nowadays of having your quarterback do all of that. Why do you think that is?
I think more that the no huddle was becoming more and more of a thing, 25 years ago when I was, coming out of high school that way. Honestly, we were very and 21 personnel. And our offensive MVP when I was a senior was our fullback. You know what I mean? So, like, and rightfully so, he's a heck of a player. Right. He's actually a high school coach in Emmitsburg now. But, so it's just different personnel that are on the field. Actually, Simpson here was one of the more progressive ones. Like when I played, I remember playing right out here in Buxton, and I mean, we're getting a look at, Coach Neiman's offense, and I mean, they're spread all over the place, and Mike Donnerworth was whipping the thing around all over the place, and Dusty Kane making a bunch of plays, and it was a lot different, right? Is that no huddle spread type element where when you're huddling, one of the biggest benefits, certainly is taking control not only of the tempo, but of really a lot of that play calling at the line of scrimmage. And, it allowed us to call 3 different runs and a 3-step in the huddle, because those guys were hearing it right from me as opposed to trying to do that all in the line of scrimmage. So that's definitely the way the game has changed in the college side of things. A lot more of those adjustments are made probably more from the sideline. But I mean, I still believe in having our quarterbacks. I mean, when they're ready, have the ability to make some of those adjustments because they have the best view, right? They got a front row seat compared to us on the sideline. So
your first or after, lacrosse and your most recent stop now was at Illinois Wesleyan, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What was it about Illinois Wesleyan that made you want to stay there for as long as you did?
Yeah. No, great question. The location was awesome. Like Bloomington Normal is a great town. Honestly, if this job hadn't opened up, I mean, we would still be there, right? In a lot of ways, just we really enjoyed it. Had a lot of friends. Loved the people we worked with. From that side of things, as well. Illinois Wesleyan was a place that you could recruit to. You really could. And there's a lot of parallels between IW and Simpson. So a lot of times the recruiting pitch, right when I got here, there's pretty similar, from that side of it. But, Simpson was certainly a place that I always had circled. I mean, just looking at the location where my family and friends are from, I mean, our ability to recruit and be different here was a place I had a lot of conversations about people I trusted in this profession. So when it opened it up, I was pretty excited about it. Actually, 7 years prior to that, before Coach Jeter was hired in that way. And I was a coordinator at lacrosse. I mean, I seriously thought about applying for it at that point, but just knew I wasn't done being a coordinator. I wasn't ready to be a head coach, at that point. And I don't know if you're ever really ready for that change, but everything happens for a reason, and we're really excited about it. And I mean, my family loves living in Enola. So, but I mean, it's that point, IW Bloomington Normal is a great place, a lot of really good people, and, certainly took the perfect opportunity to get our family to leave that place. That's for sure.
I'll tell you what, when I was in the process of getting hired here, I remember Scott O'Dario, a good friend of mine, coached for you. He asked me if I was at all interested in a position here. And right away, I was like, no. Like, I was like, I'm doing well. Like, I'm not too, I remember where that place was. And then I remember sitting down with you, and I was so impressed by your vision, everything that you had to say, where Simpson was going. And that's ultimately why I ended up coming here to coach. And I was blown away that it was your just going into your second year as a head football coach. And so as an alum, as someone that worked for you, I have so much respect for you. And I know that, Simpson is headed in the right direction. And it has been since you got here.
Yeah,
so,
I appreciate that.
But I want to talk about, that first season here. Obviously, a lot of the players that were on stat, or a lot of the players that were here weren't guys that you really recruited, but talk about some of those guys that were really able to buy into your vision and really, take it in stride.
Yeah, it was in over the last couple of years, definitely got that question a lot. Because I mean, when you do inherit a roster, and I mean, the entire coaching staff, was gone from that side of things. There's a lot of questions, and I mean, there were guys that we lost, quote unquote, that I never even met with, right? And not necessarily to other schools, but just decided that they weren't going to play football anymore from that side. So that was hard, just because the size of our roster where it was at. And then, I mean, just rolling forward to spring, how are we going to have enough guys to practice and install these new things? And then rolling forward to the fall, anytime that you get hired, after the season, you got a late start on recruiting and trying to put that together. So that's a small class. So there are a lot of challenges there. There really were. I was very fortunate that we had a very strong group of upper class leaders that were bound and determined that, like, hey, this isn't the way I'm going out. Like, I'm going to leave it better than I found it, type of thing. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, a good number of those guys graduated last year. They really did. I mean, we didn't have a huge number of guys. I mean, we were, 20 some seniors last year, which is good. But a lot of guys that were just, I mean, hyper committed to it. They just really were. And I mean, the Zach Truitts of the world. I mean, the Joe Breams of the world. Sometimes kind of the unsung heroes a little bit. But guys that made us go, they really did. And, a big part of it for me, was not coming in and saying, hey, everything we were doing before is wrong and this is right. And right or wrong, I didn't care, a lot of that. And I don't want that to sound the wrong way, but it's like, I didn't spend too much time trying to figure out like the way it was done and trying to place blame. It was more of like, hey, I wasn't here for that. This is the way we're doing it now. This is why, certainly, guys have to believe in that piece of it. And we were fortunate, a bunch of fifth year guys that stuck around even for, last season that, really cared about it and took some ownership over teaching the young guys in our program, the incoming recruits. I've never had upperclassmen and seniors and fifth years so involved and hands-on in the recruiting process as I have the last 2 years, just because those are the ones that are really, living it, right? They're speaking that message, to those young guys, and it has some weight to it. It really does. So I think we're really lucky to hold on to a number of guys that are not only talented, but really evolving as leaders. And I think was a big part of it. And we did have, some guys that were kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we couldn't allow that to happen. Like, football is not a luxury or something that you just kind of take it and leave it like it's a social media app, right? I mean, it's hey, this is something you're living every single day, all day. And, 10 days a year, we get, a chance to play a college football game. It's all we're guaranteed. It's the other 355 other days of the year that, I mean, you're still a college football player. And I know from living it, and so do you and all these guys, that, those are the things that you really value beyond those games. It's like that experience, being there with your teammates, invest in those relationships, and understanding how far you can push yourself, as far as hard work and effort. And, I think a lot of our guys really clicked with that. And there were some guys that are just, weren't as committed as they needed to be, and, decided this wasn't for them. Doesn't make them bad people. It's just not the right guys for our program now. And, that's really allowed us to, navigate through these last couple of years and get to a point where, rosters in a size where, we finally feel like we have some decent depth. It's not a finished product, but, where in year one, I mean, there were times where, man, we only had 2 D linemen available for a game against Co or Warper. I mean, those are real things that happened in year one, right? And we're trying to, put in all these packages to find a way just to hold on to things. Or, offensive linemen that we're down to 5, and 2 of them are guys that have never played in a college football game, or never even played offensive line in college before, right? So we've kind of gone through some of those tough times and getting to the point now where, all right, well, let's continue to, just take everything that we're doing to a higher level of expectation more than anything else.
One of the things that I think is really special about you is I always feel like you have a really good pulse on the team and how the team is feeling. And I think one of the reasons for that is the leadership council that you've set up.
Yeah.
What kind of value has that brought to you as being a head coach now?
Oh, immense. I mean, it really is. And, I think most programs, high school, college, even all the high school team camps coming through the last couple, weeks, have their versions of that, right? Of some sort of leadership council. And we did it at Illinois Wesleyan as well, in previous stops. It just, I was excited to be able to use it the way that, I wanted to, and not necessarily just be a group, but one that we meet with, interact with, do a lot of leadership training, from that side of things, and allows us just in a smaller group to get into some real conversations, about different things. So, allows me to get to know, some of our most influential players a little bit better beyond just what I see on the field or in the meeting rooms. But also allows those guys to get a better feel for who I am, where I'm coming from. And honestly, I mean, be able to just support the message, that, and it's consistent, from that side. So I've tried to create, that space where if there's something going on, and especially something I need to know about, that our guys feel comfortable bringing that up, discussing it, knowing that I'm not just going to jump all over them, just because they're the messenger. But in a lot of ways, it's allowed them to take a lot more ownership in everything we're doing. And, hopefully that continues to bleed out into the rest of our roster.
One of the things about, I think one thing that if you're going to be a successful program, you really need to have some support from the administration.
Yeah.
Talk about Coach Bell and his support of you. Obviously he hired you, but not only that, but he's been a big, supporter since you've been here.
Yeah. No question. And, since Coach Bell, Marty Bell, has been the athletic director here, I mean, there's been a lot of, change, from that side of it, facilities, new hires and in coaching side of things, definitely looking to enhance what we already have. And that's something that I was looking for. I had a lot of questions about, because as soon as that thing came open, I got in contact. I shot him an email right away. And I mean, Marty got back to me like that night, right? So, I mean, there was a good fit and a connection from the start. But, a lot of it is like, all right, is our program to be supported the way it needs to be to, continue to have success and to raise those standards, and, the admission side of things, the financial aid piece, that type of thing. I mean, just a lot of, important things to recruitment, as well. But then also once they're here, do we have the ability to provide the experience that we're selling, that we want to have, for our guys? And he's a guy that prides himself on, like, hey, you got an idea, something you want to do. He doesn't like to say no, right? It's like, all right, let's find a way to do it, from that side. So there's always adjustments and things that you have to do there, but definitely thankful for not only his presence, but his experience as a coach, being a longtime basketball coach, and, knowing what it's like to be in a locker room and, certainly have those conversations with student athletes and see that side of it. And I think that's extremely valuable for our athletic department and a lot of the great changes that we've made.
The other really important piece that you need a lot of support from is the space that we're right on top of right now, the weight room with Coach Schmitz. Talk about him and, really the trust that you have in him to kind of obviously take them for, every time other than the fall and the spring ball.
Yeah, no. And that's huge. And that's one thing that I learned quickly in my time as a young coach, just how vital that is. Because when I started coaching, I mean, there weren't many places that had their own strength staff or own strength coaches. Maybe it was a tack on type of job. And I mean, there's a lot of schools, even our competitors still have that, here's a basketball coach and we're tagging on strength and conditioning to it, or whether it's their expertise or not. And just being a young coach, I mean, at multiple spots where, I was one of the coaches that was administering workouts and going through that side of it and trying to balance those things, and just knowing how challenging that was, to give your full self as a coach in the weight room all day and recruiting and all these different things. And, having guys that, Sam Schmitz, Matt Hoskins, Missy Anchor now, as our sports nutritionist, having, a staff down there that is every bit as much committed, to our success on the field, our players' development, is so huge. It is, because in a lot of ways, especially with our rules, during the off season, all through the summer, we don't get a chance to have a lot of hands-on, work with them from that side. So, Coach Schmitz really becomes like the head coach of our offseason in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of accountability and investment there. And the guys know that he's there for them, and he expects them to, show up and be there for him. And I think it's a big part of continuing to build our culture, year round, no question.
Obviously, going into this past season, you end up going 5-0 at home. Obviously, I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. What do you think was the big, growth from one year to the next? Obviously, you start implementing the culture that you want. You start recruiting some of the guys that you want. But really, what would you, if you had to put it on one thing, what would it be?
A little bit is belief in that way that, and you got to be careful with that a little bit. Is you don't want to have expectations that you're just going to win. It's just going to happen, right? But that was a big thing, even going back to year one, where we were 3-7. We didn't win any home games that year, and a big part of it was like, guys, we can play with anybody, right? And that was the start of it. And I mean, even in year one, and I try to stay away from but like, because winning is extremely important to us. But like, I don't worry about a scoreboard. I mean, when some of those big guys come to town and you got top 10 teams rolling in here and things like that. And heck, man, they got twice as many guys on their sideline for an away game than we do on our home game. It's like, all right, it's no, guys, it don't matter. They're going to show up. We're going to show up. We're going to fight. I mean, that's what it is. And you don't need to be worried about the outcome. You need to be worried about your effort, right? Your attitude, the way you carry yourself, the way you approach it. And again, a lot of those older guys, that we just graduated really grabbed a hold of that. And that's who we were. So, and we went 3-7 in that first year. And I definitely think there were some more games that we could have won in that. And our program felt that. So, taking that mentality in year two and, not necessarily expecting to win every single game, but whether, we're playing, BV at home or, we're rolling up to Wartburg's homecoming with 8,000 people, in the stadium, like, making sure our guys are ready for that moment and hey, let's go out there and be ourselves and compete as hard as we can. The rest of it's going to sort itself out. And really proud of the way that we approached a lot of that. We didn't always play perfect. We definitely didn't play clean in all those games, but our guys were ready to compete. And that was probably the first hurdle that we had to overcome. That's for sure.
In the recruiting process now, what are some of the things that you are looking for in a guy that makes him a fit for Simpson?
Yeah.
Because I think for you, and obviously getting a front row seat to how you conduct yourself, what are the things that you are really looking for? Not just that they're a talented player, but that they're a Simpson guy and that they're the right fit for you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I do think that a lot of times in what's turning into, a very expedited recruiting process for everybody, right, is the higher levels continue to move up a lot of those, parts in their process and, offers and commitments and what they're asking their recruits to do, that just trickles down to everybody else in small college football. And so guys are looking to make decisions sooner and sooner that way. And to me, I think I shouldn't say a lot of people, but there are certainly our competitors that kind of skip some of those pieces where, all right, well, that kid can play football. All right. And I think he could help us. Okay. Well, that's just a part of it when it really comes down to it as far as the fit. And, getting a chance to get to know them. I mean, a big part of being a fit is, are they the right fit for our school academically? And they don't need to be a 4.0 and a 36 on the test. Lord knows I wasn't that coming out of high school by any means, but, certainly having good grades certainly helps you. Everybody understands that with scholarships and things of that nature. But, a guy that's just, there's an investment in his education, right? And not that he knows that I want to be a finance major or I want to be strength conditioning or whatever it is, but understand the value of it in that, hey, this is something that I need to be committed to as well. You can't just come here for football and then maybe show up to class when you want to, because now, our staff is chasing those guys around, trying to kick them in the ass to get them to school every day, where, hey, if it's something they value and they're going to take ownership in, well, they're going to fit in really well here. And that's the type of culture that we want, guys that, certainly are committed on the field, but also understand that that means being committed off the field and in the classroom. And, it's a big piece. We'll still have guys that we have to help and give support to, sure, but it shouldn't be us like talking them into using the resources on campus. They want to use these things because they want to have success and set themselves up after college, not just to have some dream job right away, but to have options, to have some flexibility in who you want to be at that point. And, guys that get that are a good fit, and that's for sure. Beyond that, beyond the ability to help us and continue to improve our level play on the field, just the fit as a person, I think is a big piece. And, regardless of where you come from or what you look like, where your hometown was, or anything like that, it's like, do you fit well with this group? Do you have common interests, right? Football is certainly the start of it, but that's not the end of it when it comes down to it. And so much of our experience as college football players for guys like you and me, is a lot of those relationships that you continue on after your time on the field. And, guys that want that and that want that experience are the guys that we want here more than anything else. And I'm very upfront with guys like that before we ever put an offer out to any of those guys. Like, this is what we're looking for. And when we have spent enough time around them that we know that they fit those things, we're very upfront, with them about that process.
If you walk through this building that we're in right now, it's not very hard to see that Simpson is a historic place. And obviously there's been times where this program has gone through ebbs and flows, but
Mhm.
no doubt it's a historic program and there's a tradition of winning here. One thing that we did recently is get the first alumni golf outing going this year.
Yeah.
How important has it been to really reignite that fire within the
Yeah.
alumni? Because obviously one of the things you did was bring speakers back to talk
Mhm.
and having guys around. What has that been
Yeah.
like, since you've taken over as head coach?
It's been a learning experience for me. It really has. In a role that was different now as a head coach, right? Just that the expectation of alumni connections that way. And one of the things unique for me is that I'm not an alum, right? And I don't just have a lot of natural connections with the existing alumni base. So that's something that we've had to put some effort into, and it's something that we need to continue to get better at when it comes right down to it. But it's been really fun because that's the thing that's unique about Simpson is that, the last place I worked, Norm Esch, who just recently retired, but he was the head coach there for 36, 37 seasons. That's pretty unbelievable. The
Mhm.
previous head coach there was there for 34,
Yeah.
so you're talking about 70 years of only two head coaches.
Yeah.
And he played for the previous guy. So there's a common thread there that everybody can kind of rally to where, here at Simpson, it's a little bit different because as strong a presence as Coach Williams was and all the success that he had, especially through the 90s and turn of the century. Coach Neiman came in and was here for, a shorter period of time, but they had a ton of success as well, and had a lot of really good players and, were in the playoffs, during that time. But a lot of people kind of forget that piece a little bit. And into Coach Glogowski, who's, a very polarizing person and a great coach and good friend, a guy that's very supportive of us even to this point. And into Coach Jeter. So you kind of have these alumni bases that are a little bit segmented out. Like it's a Jeter guy, or it's a Glow guy, or it's a Williams guy, or a Neiman guy, and soon to be a Hoskins guy, as we're going
Right.
through it. And, I think that's a unique part of our history, here is, trying to pull all those guys together, and that's been a big part of the golf outing piece is, getting a chance for a lot of these guys to get to know each other as well and share a lot of those stories and commonalities and connect them ultimately with our current guys so that they feel part of this brotherhood, that's bigger than just themselves or just their 4 years here. And it's easier said than done, that's for sure. But there's a lot of alumni that still have a lot of pride in Simpson football and over 130 years of Simpson football throughout our history. So, there's a lot of cool connections that we've made and a lot of really cool ones that still come. And that's an exciting part about where we're at.
As an alum, there's people that I've run into that were Simpson football players
Mhm.
that I've, known through either connection with my parents or
Yeah.
whatever the case is. And I'm like, oh, you're a Simpson football guy. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. I'm like, I didn't even know. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's fun because in Des Moines area, it's like a lot of the people that went here, they're
Yep.
25 minutes that
Yep.
direction. So
Yep.
I've really enjoyed getting to know Dusty a lot. I got to
Yeah.
know him a lot last
Yeah.
year, and obviously as receivers coach. But how are you feeling going into this coming season? Obviously now going into your third year, how do you continue to, I guess, build momentum not only on the field but recruiting and how you go about your culture on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I kind of reverting back to one of the things we talked about before and how we do have a blueprint, and a lot of our players kind of know what to expect now, especially the guys that have been through it a couple years and what camp's going to look like in that schedule. And it's a common coaching phrase, but complacency is the enemy. It really is. And all the great steps that we've taken in the last 2 years and being undefeated at home. The schedule turns now, and we've got a packed home slate with nationally ranked opponents and playoff teams, and nothing is given to us, right? And we certainly graduated a good number of talent. We have a lot coming back as well, but it is a big part of this season is this is our own team. It's kind of its own, in a time capsule, so to speak, that, man, guys, we got, really 4 months to roll through this thing and, define, who the 2025, Simpson football program is. So that's going to be the interesting part of it is oh, well, hey, last year we did this or we beat that team. And I mean, you turn around and, you could be 3-7 again if you have the wrong attitude and approach to it. And that's not something that I'm going to be shy about telling our guys, as we get them here in 2 weeks. So that's a big piece of it, is making sure that, yeah, we understand some of the standards that have been set, and certainly expectations continue to rise. But at the same time, this team is not last year's team, right? For good or for worse. But really kind of redefining our identity going into the season is going to be important. That's for sure.
Well, I'm so excited for this season for you. I'll be sure, obviously, to be around. Last little segment we have here is just little quick hits.
Okay.
You can feel free to expand on them as little or as much as you would like. But
Right.
a lot of wide range of topics here.
Okay.
But starting off strong, best football movie.
Best football movie. Oof. I mean, The Program.
Oh yeah,
that was probably the first one I really lashed into. I mean, there's a lot of good ones, but The Program is like your stereotypical, like 90s kind of football guys. So that's
Sweet.
where I start. Yeah.
If someone was making a movie about Simpson football, who would play you?
I don't know, Kevin James, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, I love that.
I'm not sure why he popped in my mind of hers, but yeah. Oh, that's kind of
love that. That's great. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's great. Oh my gosh. Okay. Who is a football coach, past or I shouldn't say football coach, but any coach, past or present, you'd love to sit down and talk ball with for an hour?
Oh, yeah. I mean, honestly, and I hit on it a little bit. I mean, Harold Hoskins, my grandfather, like that would be obviously, pretty special on a number of different levels, but just to, have that conversation about what this game was, 75 years ago and what it is today and how we got there, because there's a lot of things I think that are very similar and a lot of mindsets and philosophies that are very similar, just looks a lot different. So, that would definitely be my choice.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
What do you think is a non-football skill that every player should learn?
Yeah, communication. I mean, and I don't know, I guess that's kind of a football skill too, but I think it's such a huge part of your 4-year journey. I mean, in college, much less as part of a football team, it really is communicating with people around you, with your coaches. I mean, it's one of the things I talk about a lot with our guys is like, all of a sudden you're in college, this is a professional environment. It is, right? I mean, most of these guys don't even touch emails through high school, right? I mean, that's an expectation every day. So like there's a lot of things to learn that takes some guys a little bit longer, others, but that is one of the many skills that just being a part of a college football program that I mean, at least ours, I mean, that's forced upon you. Like you have to learn how to communicate or you don't make it.
Right. Football phrase that secretly drives you nuts.
It is what it is. And, I can't say that I haven't used it over the years and things like that, but, I mean, it's kind of like waving the white flag, it's like, all right, I'm done investing in fixing this problem, so to speak. And, maybe that's a little bit more of an indictment than it should be. But, I think is what it is kind of one of those things like, well, you try to steer away from that because, obviously we know it is what it is, but are we still trying to fix it and create a better, solution? Yeah.
If Simpson football team in 2025 as a band or an artist, who would they be?
A band or an artist? Oh my gosh. Let's see. A mix of some experience, but some new, like a new front man or something like that. I don't even know.
Put you on the spot a little bit.
Yeah.
Boyer, when he talked about the offensive line, he said that the O-line would be an Alice in Chains band. I didn't even know who that was. I guess that should.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, and I've grown in my music taste over the years. I'm trying to think of a good like classic rock band that has a new lead singer like that. Like, you know what I mean?
I don't know if Black Sabbath counts because they kicked Ozzy off the ship for a little bit.
Yeah,
Motley Crue kind of went through some of that, but then he came back.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm failing you on this one.
That's all right. That's all right.
What's like Van Halen, right?
Oh, there you go. That's
it's like
that's
Van
a good
Halen,
one.
right?
Van Halen. That's a great
and I'm
one.
not a huge Van Halen fan, but like the change, the front man there, that's probably
I like that.
some
No, that's
familiarity, but some new faces.
There we go. I love that. Okay, last question here. What's one piece of advice that you would give to the next generation of coaches?
Well, I think, first of all, you need to be in some of these entry level positions to know exactly what the job is, right? And I mean, we're crazy. I mean, for doing all the things that we do, all the hours of the day, for everybody's underpaid and all that type of stuff. But it's like something that you can't live without, right? That way. So like, make sure that you love it and you can't live without it. I think is the first part, because if it doesn't start there, you're not going to be willing and invested in doing all the other things that are required of your job to be really good at it. So I think that's a big part of it. And, is make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. I think is that piece of it for sure.
Great. Well, thanks, Coach. Again, I'm such a big fan of yours. Been a big fan of yours. We'll continue to support you and be a fan. And I'm just grateful that we've gotten the chance to know each other and got the chance to work for you. I learned a ton about, I've talked about this before, but recruiting, I learned a ton from you about recruiting, and that's translated into, running a business. And so I've learned a ton from you about running my own business, of how you run your own with Simpson football. So I'm just grateful for our relationship.
Well, I appreciate that. And, we're certainly big fans here and very supportive of this next endeavor, and, excited to see where it goes. That's for sure.
Thank you for listening to the Left Hash Call. For more episodes, you can go to Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, and even Facebook if you're into that. And I would really appreciate you subscribing, following, or just continue to listen. We'll see you next time. Peace.